his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. أتحدث بصفة
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to speak in my capacity as a critical stakeholder on this agenda item. Sir, the ongoing Israeli occupation of the Arab territories constitutes the greatest challenge posed to the credibility and the significance of the provisions of both the Charter and international law. And despite the unprecedented manipulations of Security Council resolutions and resolutions of the General Assembly on the Israeli occupation of occupied Arab territory in Palestine to the south of Lebanon and the Golan, the rhetoric which attempts to make the essential into secondary items of secondary importance and vice versa remain highly relevant by inundating us with details that are of little interest to the detriment of what is essential, namely that there's a need for the Israeli occupation to be brought to an end. This is the crux of this agenda item, for there to be an end to the Israeli occupation of Arab and Palestinian territories and for the Palestinians to enjoy their legitimate rights. It appears to me that some opt to engage in discussions on issues that have nothing to do with an end to the Israeli occupation of Arab lands and the Palestinian question. For example, they talk about Iran and they go on about other matters, knowing full well that this runs counter to consensus within this council and the importance of addressing the agenda item at hand. There have been unilateral measures, provocative measures. The perpetrators attempt to capitalize on the inability of this council to implement resolutions regarding the end to Israeli occupation by shirking their legal obligations, by changing the truth, shifting reality. This was done by the United States president by recognizing occupied Jerusalem as Israeli capital and then acknowledging what he called Israeli sovereignty over the Syrian Golan, by completely flouting the commitments undertaken by previous United States administrations, their commitments to adhere, to refrain from any references, to adhere to all references, including the resolution dating 1981, 497, which states that Israel, as an occupying power, by imposing its legislation, its administration in the Syrian Golan, acts in a manner that is null and void with no legal validity to its actions. The acts of aggression, the provocations have gone on unabated through direct provocations targeting our country, including with armed terrorist groups. This has cost the lives of 4 civilians, including a baby. 21 people, most were women and children, were wounded. Israeli practices are also geared towards seizure of goods and lands of the residents of the Golan to expand settlements at times or to build the wind power stations. This at times is merely a pretext, because our fellow compatriots in the Syrian Golan have not registered their land cadastres, and hence their goods are being seized and their property is being confiscated. And this is what is being done by the Israeli occupying powers in Jerusalem and in the West Bank in a scandalous way. Yet this is not where it ends. The occupying power held a meeting of the Council of Ministers in the Golan, and they announced the introduction of a new settlement called Trump Heights. This was a gift from the Prime Minister of the occupying power to the United States President for having violated the resolutions of this council and international law by unilaterally acknowledging and recognizing Israeli sovereignty over the Syrian Golan. This is a matter that was not addressed by Madame DiCarlo, which I regret, by repeating and thereby she repeated the errors by Nikolai Mladenov. If Madame DiCarlo, Undersecretary General for Political Affairs, fails to address the matter of the occupied Syrian Golan, occupied under this agenda item, this constitutes a grave breach by the Secretariat for thereby she repeats the errors by Mr. Mladenov, who never addresses the issue of the occupied Syrian Golan during the briefings which he delivers before the Security Council. This is a grievance from us to the Secretary General for this matter to be duly addressed. Our government reaffirms the fact that the Golan is an integral part of the Syrian Arab territory. This is an inviolable right that cannot be subjected to any negotiations. The Syrian Golan and Syria's presence in the area under international law is at the helm of our priorities. We call upon the Security Council and the United Nations to act without delay in a robust way to see to it that the principles of international law are applied and to an end to Israeli aggressive policies and the scandalous violations of international law, of resolutions of the Security Council, of the provisions of the Charter, including Resolution 242, 338, and 497. We reiterate our demand that Israel, occupying power, be obliged to release the prisoner Sepki al-Maket, as well as to release all Syrian prisoners who are present in the prisons of the occupying power. Mr. Sepki al-Maket is a Syrian, a citizen of the Golan. He spent 27 years in Israeli jails, just as many years as Nelson Mandela spent in the apartheid-era jails. His crime was having documented through sounds and video the cooperation of Israeli authorities with armed terrorist groups. He was convicted to 14 years in prison. Mr. President, you all would note that the statements delivered by the representative of the Israeli occupation before this council is an unparalleled denial of resolutions of the council and international law. I would recall that President Mahmoud Abbas stated that the organization adopted more than 800 resolutions on the subject of Palestine. The statement delivered by Israel speaks of everything except what is essential, namely this agenda item. And for this reason, and this is the reason that this meeting has been held since 2002, namely Israeli occupation of the Arab territory, and the need to put an end to the occupation, the denial for Israeli to have access to the lands occupied, including Jerusalem since 1967, including the Syrian Golan in its full and what remains of Lebanese territory, is the main reason for the ongoing tensions which prevail in this region, and this contrary to what the representative of Israel attempts to have us believe during each meeting held in this chamber. One day he speaks to us of Lebanon, one day Libya, one day Sudan, one day about Yemen. He denies the essence of this agenda item, namely occupation of Arab lands and the Palestinian question, the recognition of the legitimate right of the Palestinian people. Therein lies the essence of the agenda item, neither Iran, nor Sudan, nor Yemen, nor Libya. To conclude, Mr. President, the Syrian Arab Republic remains in its coherent stance to support the Palestinian people's right to self-determination and their desire to set up an independent state on its territory with Jerusalem as a capital. Also, the acknowledgement of the right to return as set out in Resolution 294 dating 1981. We also we state that Palestine is a full-fledged member of this organization by implementing a principle which is subject neither to the markets of the occupation nor any other factors. Thank you.
Agradezco
I thank the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic